When Keanu Reeves' car broke down on a quiet road, a kind black mechanic stopped, repaired it for free, and refused any payment. Deeply moved, Keanu later tracked him down and transformed his life with a life-changing gesture of gratitude, showing how one small act of kindness can rewrite someone's future. Let me tell you about the day Keanu Reeves' life quietly turned in a new direction. It didn't happen on a movie set or under bright lights. It began with a stubborn car that chose the worst possible moment to die on a half-empty highway. The sun was sliding down behind the hills outside Los Angeles, turning the sky a sleepy orange. Keanu drove alone, no bodyguards, no convoy, just an aging black sedan he liked precisely because no one expected a Hollywood star to be inside it. The engine hummed low, and for the first time in weeks there was silence. No shouting directors, no explosive stunt rigs, no fans pushing phones into his hands. Just whined through a cracked window and the steady rhythm of tires on asphalt. He should have been exhausted in a good way. The action scenes for his latest film had gone well. The studio was thrilled. Social media was on fire with behind-the-scenes photos. But as the traffic thinned and the city lights faded in his mirror, a familiar emptiness pressed against his ribs. Fame looked loud from the outside. Inside, it often sounded like an echo in an empty room. On the passenger seat lay a folded piece of paper with a child's handwriting on it. A letter from a boy named Louis, a 12-year-old in a children's hospital a couple of hours away. "If you ever have time," the letter said, "could you visit? My mom says heroes are busy, but I still hope." Keanu had circled this day on his calendar in red. No studio obligations, no interviews, just a quiet drive and a surprise visit to a kid who had no idea he was coming. The road widened into a long, lonely stretch, fields on both sides burnt golden by the sun. Keanu tapped the steering wheel lightly, lost in thought. He remembered being a kid himself, watching strangers decide whether to be kind or to look away. A school custodian who had slipped him a sandwich when he'd forgotten, lunch for the third day in a row. A neighbor who fixed his mother's old car, refusing payment with a single sentence. "Some debts you pay forward, not back." The car shuddered. Keanu frowned and glanced at the dashboard. No warning lights, no weird sounds. Then the engine coughed. Once, twice. The steering wheel went heavy in his hands, and the sedan lurched like a tired animal giving up in the middle of the road. "Come on, not now," he muttered, easing his foot off the gas and trying to coax the car forward. "You had all morning to fall apart. You pick right now." The engine died. In an instant, the hum vanished. All he could hear was the rush of passing air and the distant roar of other cars as the sedan coasted, slower and slower, toward complete stillness. Adrenaline snapped through him. He flicked on the hazard lights, tightened his grip, and guided the deadweight toward the narrow shoulder. A pickup behind him honked and split lanes at the last second, the driver shouting something he couldn't hear. For a heartbeat, Keanu felt the cold possibility of metal slamming into metal, of a stupid accident on a stupid day ending everything. The sedan rolled to a stop barely off the white line, its nose dipping as if in apology. Keanu sat there, hands still on the wheel, listening to his own heartbeat thud in his ears. Cars whipped past, shaking the frame every few seconds. Nobody slowed down. Nobody cared that the guy in the faded t-shirt, staring at his useless dashboard, was someone they had paid to watch overthrow entire armies on screen. He gave a short, humorless laugh. Action hero, huh? Can't even outrun a broken fuel pump. He took out his phone, battery at 9%, perfect. No signal. Of course. For a long moment he just sat, watching the last light melt from the sky. The hospital was still more than an hour away. Louis's letter burned in his mind, those shaky, hopeful lines talking about maybe next year like it was a real promise. Keanu imagined that boy staring at the door, waiting for a surprise that, thanks to one dead car, might never arrive. He shoved the door open and stepped out into the dry evening air. Heat rose in mirage waves from the asphalt, the smell of rubber and dust mixing into something sharp. Trucks screamed by, the wind they dragged almost knocking him off balance. He raised the hood, the metal hot against his fingers, and it lifted with a stiff groan. Smoke wasn't pouring out, no obvious disaster, just a tangle of parts, belts, and wires he only half understood. He leaned over the engine and squinted. "All right," he murmured. "Let's pretend I know what I'm looking at." For a few minutes he poked gently at hoses and connections, the way you tap a sleeping dog you're not sure is friendly. He checked the battery terminals, jiggled the cables, peered at the fuse box. Nothing looked catastrophically wrong, but nothing looked right either. The car remained stubbornly dead, hazards blinking like a calm, mocking heartbeat. Another wave of cars flew past. A couple of drivers craned their necks, maybe recognizing his face, maybe just curious about the stranded guy in the middle of nowhere. No one pulled over. Keanu felt irritation stir in his chest. Not at them, not really, but at the whole situation. The schedule he kept, the way his life could move millions of dollars in a single day on set, and yet right now he was just another stranded man with a useless piece of metal and a dying phone. He thought about calling the studio's emergency driver. They would send someone in 20 minutes tops with a black SUV, cold water, probably a fresh shirt. But the idea made his skin itch. It would come with apologies, then calls from producers. "Are you okay? Do you need anything? We can reschedule the hospital visit. There'll be other kids." There shouldn't have to be other kids. A wind gust pushed dust into his face, and he stepped back, wiping his eyes on the back of his wrist. The sky was darker now, the horizon turning purple. A few early stars pricked through the fading light. "Okay," he said to the car, as if negotiating with a stubborn co-star. "You win, I call a tow. We figure this out, but you owe me one." He slid back into the driver's seat and lifted the phone again. A single bar of signal flickered, taunting him. He tapped to dial roadside assistance. The call connected, then dropped. Connected again, then froze on the first ring. 7% battery. His jaw tightened. For a second, a sharp, unreasonable anger flashed through him. At fate, at machines, at himself for not charging the phone, for not leaving earlier, for thinking he could slip away from his carefully managed life and just drive like an ordinary man. He closed his eyes and took a slow breath, counting each inhale the way his martial arts coach had taught him years before. Anger made people reckless, patience kept them alive. On set, that rule kept him from broken bones. Out here, it had to be enough to keep him from losing his temper and smashing the phone against the dashboard. When he opened his eyes, the sky had darkened another shade, and for the first time he felt a thin line of worry. The shoulder was narrow. The road was fast. A tired trucker could drift a little, just a little, and that would be it. He turned his hazards a notch brighter and left the door slightly open, so any oncoming driver would see the interior light. "Breathe," he told himself softly. "You've been in worse spots." He thought of all the scenes he'd done, hanging off moving trains, rolling across asphalt with bullets, blank ones, snapping past his ears, fighting choreographed villains on rooftops 30 stories high. Out there, everything was controlled chaos. Here, the danger was quieter, more real. No director to yell, "Cut," if something went wrong. Far down the highway, headlights appeared, two, side by side, growing larger, brighter. Another truck, he assumed. They always sounded louder at night. But as the lights approached, they slowed. The engine's rumble shifted from distant to near, then dropped as the vehicle eased onto the shoulder behind his dead sedan. Gravel crunched under heavy tires. The glow of the headlights filled his mirrors, painting the inside of his car in stark white. Keanu straightened in his seat, instinctively checking the door lock before reminding himself he was the one in trouble out here. Still, years of life in the spotlight had taught him to be careful about strangers, even the well-meaning ones. The truck's engine cut off. Silence rushed in again, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal and the echo of passing cars. He heard a door open, then the clank of something metallic, tools, maybe, against the truck's frame. Footsteps approached, slow and steady. Keanu stepped out of the car to meet whoever was coming, squinting into the bright beam of the headlights. A silhouette emerged first. Broad shoulders, a cap pulled low, the loose outline of a mechanic's jumpsuit. As the stranger came around the hood, the glare softened, revealing a tall black man in his 30s, face lined with grease and sweat, eyes sharp but open, like he'd seen too much trouble on the road to be easily surprised by any of it. He carried a battered toolbox in one hand and a bottle of water in the other. "You look like you and that car just had an argument," the man said, voice warm with a hint of amusement. Mind if I see who's winning? Keanu studied him for a heartbeat, something in the man's calm presence settling the knot in his chest. There was no phone pointed at his face, no sudden gasp of recognition, no, "Oh my God, you're—" just a stranger offering help on a lonely stretch of road. In the fading light, with the hazard lights ticking between them like a metronome, Keanu had no idea that this mechanic, this ordinary man with oil on his sleeves and tired eyes, was about to pull his life in a direction no scriptwriter could have predicted. The mechanic set the toolbox down with a dull thud and handed Keanu the water like they already knew each other. Up close, Keanu could see the faint oil stains on his collar, the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the kind that came from equal parts worry and laughter. The man's grip was firm, calloused, but not aggressive when they shook. "Name S. Darius," he said. "You picked a bad place to have a bad day." "Keanu," he answered out of habit, then winced a little, waiting for the double take. It didn't come. Darius crouched under the raised hood like the name meant nothing more than Mark or Tom. He ran practiced eyes over the tangle of metal, tapping here, pressing there, listening the way a doctor listens to a heartbeat. Behind them, the white pickup idled, an older work truck with a magnetic sign on the door that read, D. Carter Mobile Auto. The paint on the sign was chipped, but every tool inside the open bed was lined up with military neatness. Darius leaned in deeper, resting one hand on the radiator support. "When did it die?" he asked. "Any noise before it quit, any smells, warning lights, grinding, clanking, spiritual screaming from the dashboard?" "Nothing dramatic," Keanu said. "It coughed, lost power, then decided life was meaningless." "So existential car trouble?" Darius grinned. "My favorite." He popped off a cover, traced a wire with his fingers, then reached into the cabin. "Mind if I try to start it?" Keanu nodded, and Darius twisted the key. The engine turned over weakly, wheezed like an old smoker, and fell silent. "Okay," Darius muttered. "Fuel or spark, my money's on fuel." He slid back out, wiped his hands on a rag hanging from his belt, and glanced up at Keanu. "Where you headed in such a hurry?" "Children's Hospital, couple hours out." The words felt heavier now, like saying them out loud gave the clock more power. "There's a kid waiting. I'm already cutting it close." Darius studied his face for a moment, something thoughtful moving behind his eyes. "Family." "No," Keanu said quietly. "That's kind of the point." Another truck blew by, close enough to rattle the hood. Darius didn't even flinch. He grabbed a small flashlight from his pocket and slid halfway under the front bumper, gravel crunching beneath his back. Keanu instinctively stepped closer to the road, angling his body so the headlights of oncoming cars would have to pass him before they reached the mechanic. It was a pointless bit of protection, but it felt wrong to just stand there while the man stuck his arms into danger for him. Darius's phone buzzed in his chest pocket. He stopped, pulled it out, checked the screen. For a second, something like guilt flickered across his face. He silenced the call without answering and went right back to the engine. "You don't have to do this if you're in the middle of something," Keanu said. "I can call a tow, wait it out." "Tow truck out here'll take an hour and charge you half a kidney," Darius replied, voice muffled from beneath the car. "If I can't at least tell you what's wrong in 10 minutes, I'm not worth the grease on my hands." Keanu squatted down beside the bumper so he could see him better. "I can pay," he added. "Whatever you need." Darius's feet shifted as he worked. "We'll talk about that later," he said. "Right now, I'm just trying to keep you from getting flattened on this shoulder." Keanu watched the precise movements of his hands, the way his fingers felt their way along hoses and lines like he'd done this routine 1,000 times. There was a quiet confidence in him, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything. The kind Keanu had seen in veteran stunt coordinators and old musicians who could make a guitar sing with 2 fingers. The sky had tipped fully into blue-black by the time Darius slid out and stood, brushing dust from his back. His brow was damp, and there was a smudge of grease on his cheekbone. "Bad news, man," he said, not sugarcoating it. "Fuel pump's shot. You're not limping this thing to the next exit. It's done for tonight unless a miracle drops a new pump from the clouds." Keanu felt the sentence land in his chest. He glanced at his watch, then at the thin ribbon of highway stretching forward. Visiting hours, the drive, the time it would take to tow, to find parts. It all stacked up in his mind like falling dominoes, each one pushing him a little further from the kid waiting in that hospital room with a letter that said, maybe next year. He swallowed, how long to fix it? Darius blew out a slow breath. With the right part, couple hours, but out here at this time? He shook his head. Parts stores closed. Best I can do is tow you to my shop in town, tuck your car in, and we wait till morning. Morning is too late, Keanu said, sharper than he meant to. The frustration wasn't at Darius, but it spilled toward him anyway. He caught himself and softened his tone. Sorry, it's just, it matters that I get there tonight. Darius held his gaze, reading something deeper than inconvenience in the tightness of Keanu's jaw. You said Children's Hospital, right? Yeah. Kid S expecting you. He doesn't know I'm coming, Keanu admitted. That's supposed to be the good part. Darius looked down the road, then back at the dead car, then at Keanu again, weighing something on an invisible scale. The highway noise pulsed around them, a reminder that the world kept moving whether they solved this or not. Look, Darius said finally, nodding toward his truck. My shop's 10 minutes from here. I can tow your car in, lock it up, and then I'll drive you myself to that hospital. I was headed home, but home can wait a couple hours. That's a long drive, Keanu said. You don't even know who this kid is. Yeah, but I know what it feels like to be the one waiting, Darius replied. Sometimes the only thing that keeps you going is the thought that maybe, just maybe, somebody will show up. The quiet conviction in his words caught Keanu off guard. Nobody had ever rescued him in a movie this simply, with a pickup and a tired smile. This was the kind of heroism that didn't come with orchestral music and slow-motion cameras. Let me at least pay you for the tow, the time, everything, Keanu insisted. It's not a favor if it costs you. Darius shook his head. We'll figure the car out later, ride S on me. That's not necessary, Keanu said. Maybe not, Darius answered, but it's right. He turned toward his truck to grab the tow straps. His phone buzzed again. This time he pulled it out and answered, voice dropping. Yeah, Ma, I see the time. I know. Tell her I'm on my way soon, okay? I picked up a roadside. He's got someplace important to be. A faint, raspy little cough leaked through the tiny speaker before the call ended, followed by a woman's gentle scolding in the background. Darius's eyes closed for half a second longer than a blink as he tucked the phone away. Keanu watched him, something tightening in his chest that had nothing to do with his broken car. He had a sudden, sharp sense that this man was already stretched thin, already running on fumes, and yet here he was, adding a stranger's emergency to his list. Darius grabbed the heavy tow straps from the truck bed and turned back with a forced half-smile. All right, he said. Let's get your ride safe and get you where you're going, mister. His gaze held on Keanu's face a beat longer, like he was finally letting himself look properly. Recognition flickered, then settled, and the corner of his mouth lifted in something between surprise and amusement. Reeves, he finished quietly. Guess I really can't charge John Wick for a tow, can I? The inside of Darius's truck smelled faintly of motor oil and peppermint, the kind of scent that clung to a life spent on the road. Photos were clipped to the sun visor with bent paper clips. A little girl missing her front teeth, grinning around an ice cream cone. The same girl older in a pink hoodie, her head wrapped in a patterned scarf, hospital wristband visible on her thin wrist as she flashed a thumbs up at the camera. Gravel crunched under the tires as they left Keanu's car locked behind the fence of a modest, dim-lit mechanic's yard. Once they hit the highway again, the night opened in front of them like a black tunnel carved by the truck's headlights. You recognized me? Keanu said at last, breaking the hum of the engine. Yeah, Darius admitted, hands steady on the wheel. Took me a second. Out here people look different, less poster and more person. You didn't say anything. Didn't seem like you needed the whole, oh my God, can I get a selfie, routine when your ride was dying under you. Darius glanced over, a quick sideways look. Besides, you're not the only one with somewhere important to be tonight. Keanu's eyes dropped to the photos on the visor. Your daughter. Amara, Darius said, and the way he spoke her name sounded like a prayer and a promise welded together. She's 8. Heart's been fighting her since she was born. Hospital's where that call came from. She's there with my mom tonight. You should be with her, Keanu said, guilt tugging at him. Turn around, drop me at the nearest gas station, I'll figure something out. She needs you more than I do. Darius shook his head, jaw tightening in a familiar, stubborn line. I'm with her every night I can be, every morning before I open the shop. Her heart monitor could sing my ringtone in its sleep. She knows her daddy sometimes has to stop for people on the road. He tapped the steering wheel lightly. She'd be mad if I didn't. Rain that wasn't rain streaked the windshield, smears left by tired wipers as Darius flicked them on and off, more out of habit than need. Streetlights flashed by at regular intervals, turning the cabin into a stuttering film reel. Those movies you make, Darius said after a moment, eyes still on the road. I watched them on my phone the first night Amara was in intensive care. Couldn't afford a hotel, so I slept in this truck out in the hospital lot. Your crazy stunts kept my brain from spiraling. Gave me something to hold on to that wasn't the sound of her monitors. Keanu stared out at the dark shoulder, the confession landing heavier than any compliment he'd heard in years. You make it look like I did something special, he said. I was just learning choreography. Maybe, Darius replied, but sometimes the right distraction is its own kind of medicine. They rode in silence for a while, the night deepening around them. A sign flashed overhead, Children's Hospital 62 miles. It felt both close and impossibly far. So what's the kid's name? Darius asked. Louis, Keanu said. Saying it out loud made the boy more real and the distance to him more cruel. He wrote a letter, said my movies help him forget the chemo for a little while, asked if I'd visit sometime if it's not too much trouble. Like he was asking me to borrow a pencil or something. World breaks my heart with kids like that, Darius murmured. Always saying please for things they should have by default. Keanu nodded. I wrote back to his mom, said I'd try. Then the schedule exploded, shoots got rescheduled, a stunt went wrong. Months went by, I kept thinking, I'll go next week. And next week never came. When I finally called, the nurse said his condition was sliding and he talked less about the future. This week, I told myself, no more delays. Life had other plans, Darius said, drumming his fingers on the wheel. Or I didn't make mine strong enough, Keanu replied quietly. The fuel gauge on the dashboard hovered just above empty, an orange light burning like a small accusation. Darius noticed Keanu's eyes track it. Relax, Darius said with a short laugh. I know this tank better than I know my own heartbeat. We've got 20 miles easy. Hospital's more than that. Yeah, that's why I'm planning a very romantic date with a gas pump in about 15 minutes. True to his word, he swung off at the next exit, coasting into a lonely service station where half the bulbs in the overhead lights had given up long ago. Moths battered themselves against the working ones, wings fluttering in frantic circles. Darius stepped out and slipped his card into the reader. The machine beeped, spit his card back out. He tried again, slower, another beep, DENIED. He stood still for a beat, shoulders squaring slightly, then reached into his pocket. He pulled out a folded wad of bills, worn and thin. He counted under his breath, thumb pressing each note. It was barely enough for half a tank. Keanu's fingers tightened on the door handle. Let me get this, he said, already reaching for his wallet. Darius shook his head without turning around. Roadside, S on me, remember. This isn't roadside, Keanu argued gently. This is you running your life on fumes for a stranger. Stranger with a kid waiting on him, Darius countered. He fed the crumpled bills into the machine, one by one. Besides, I don't take money from people stuck in ditches. Bad luck. My pops used to say if you start putting a price on kindness, you'll forget how to give it away. You can't pay bills with kindness, Keanu said. Darius shrugged, lifting the gas nozzle. Can't live with myself without it either. The pump clicked to life, numbers climbing far too slowly. In the harsh fluorescent glow, Darius suddenly looked older than he had on the highway, lines deeper, the tiredness around his eyes less easy to ignore. Yet there was no resentment in his posture, only a quiet acceptance that this, right here, was the kind of man he'd decided to be. Back on the road, the truck felt lighter, the engine humming a little more confidently. The city lights grew thicker on the horizon, a smear of gold against black. "My wife used to say the same thing," Darius said softly, as if continuing a conversation in his own head. "About kindness. She was a nurse. Car accident took her when Amara was 3. After that, it was me and the kid and a whole lot of bills. I was angry for a long time. At God, at the road, at people who drove drunk, at every happy family I saw in a grocery store." Keanu listened, saying nothing. Then one night Amara crashed hard. Darius's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "I was standing at the billing desk trying to figure out which credit card I could max out next, and this woman behind me steps forward. Didn't even give me her name. Paid for the whole procedure, said someone once did it for her. 'Don't pay me back,' she told me. 'Pay it forward.'" He let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in his chest for years. "Been trying ever since. Doesn't feel like I'm catching up, but you try." Keanu stared at him, at the straight line of his profile lit by dashboard glow, and felt something shift quietly inside. This mechanic with a half-empty tank and a daughter in a hospital bed had more courage in the way he faced ordinary days than most people had in how they faced disaster. He turned his face toward the window, partly to hide the emotion working its way there. The city finally rose around them, low buildings first, then taller ones, all glass and light and late-night traffic. Sirens wailed distantly, weaving through the hum like a warning. The hospital appeared ahead, a white and glass block crowned with a neon sign that buzzed faintly even through the closed windows. Darius pulled into the visitors' lot and killed the engine. For a heartbeat, the sudden quiet felt immense. "You sure you don't need to get to your daughter?" Keanu asked as they climbed out. "I'll get up to her after I drop you at the nurse's station," Darius said. "She's on the 4th floor. She'll be mad I didn't bring you with me, though. She's got a whole folder of your movie posters she drew herself." Keanu blinked, taken aback. "She knows who I am." "Oh yeah," Darius said with a small, proud smile. "She thinks you're what would happen if a puppy turned into a ninja." They stepped through the sliding glass doors into a blast of sterile, conditioned air. The lobby lights were softer than daytime, but far from dim, giving the whole place a strange, timeless feel. A mural of painted balloons and clouds tried earnestly to make the walls less frightening. The faint beeping of monitors floated down the hallways, mixed with distant footsteps and whispered conversations. At the reception desk, a tired nurse looked up, took in Keanu's face, and straightened with a start. Recognition flashed there, but she smoothed it away with professional grace. "Good evening," she said. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see a patient," Keanu said. "Luis Alvarez, I know it's late, but I—" Her smile faltered. A quick shadow crossed her features, the kind that only lives where bad news does. She checked the computer, eyes scanning lines that meant nothing to them and everything to the people in those rooms. "Luis was transferred to intensive care an hour ago," she said gently. "Visiting hours there ended at 9. Keanu's stomach clenched. "Is there any way I can see him, just for a minute?" The nurse hesitated, torn. Behind him, Darius shifted his weight, as if ready to speak up in support or drag him back if he lost control. The nurse looked at Keanu again, really looked this time, past the face from the posters to the man whose shoulders sagged under an invisible weight. "I'll talk to the charge nurse," she said at last. "Wait here." She stepped away, disappearing down a hallway that smelled faintly of antiseptic and lemon. As she turned the corner, Darius's phone buzzed in his pocket. He read the text, and all the color drained subtly from his face. "What is it?" Keanu asked. Darius swallowed. "Mom says Amara's been having a harder time breathing. They're running more tests. She's scared." He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them, the decision already made. "But if they let you in to see that boy, you go. Don't waste it. I'll get to my girl when I can." Keanu stared at him, struck by the quiet bravery of it. For a man whose job was to chase on-screen danger, this felt like the realest kind of courage he'd ever seen. A father caught between two people who needed hope, choosing to hold the door open for someone else first. The hallway door swung back open, the nurse returning with a serious-faced doctor beside her. They stopped a few steps away. "Mr. Reeves," the doctor said, voice calm but grave. "About Lewis, there's something you need to know before you go up there."